Why alien mercenaries dread facing humanity's Deathworld Commandos, the Dorax Incident. Krrx'tal's mandibles clicked in nervous rhythm as he watched the live feed from the surveillance drones circling the Dorax industrial facility. His fingers tightened around his plasma rifle, the slick carapace on his neck pulsing with the telltale shimmer of stress. They'd been sent here on what was supposed to be a simple job: hold the facility, prevent any external interference, and await extraction once the loot was secure. But that was before he knew humans were involved. "Command, we've got movement on sublevel B," one of his fellow mercs chittered through the comms, voice thick with a growing edge of panic. "Is it them?" asked another, Krrx'tal's close friend Zorn, a warrior with an otherwise ironclad reputation. Tonight, however, even Zorn's voice had a tremor. Krrx'tal answered before Command could. "Yes, it's them. The Deathworlders." The word sent a hush through the comms, as if speaking it aloud had somehow made it real. These humans were a faction's most feared answer to any unsolvable problem. A distant hum echoed down the hallways. It was faint at first, but unmistakable. The sound, accompanied by a low, pulsing beat, was unlike anything Krrx'tal had heard in combat before. It was rhythmic, wild, almost alive. It only grew louder, and soon enough, his translator, branded with the Federation's best software, managed to catch fragments of the words. "I was born from the bottom of the ocean, where the dragons dwell." "What is that?" hissed a young recruit over the comms, his voice barely a squeak. "War cry, maybe? Or psychological warfare?" Zorn guessed, almost pleading for someone to disagree. Krrx'tal grimaced, his eyes flicking back to the feed. A group of armored figures moved like shadows through the hallways, their movements effortless, their strange, pulsing music filling the facility with the unsettling promise of chaos. A pair of them paused at a corridor junction, seemingly making light conversation as if they weren't crouched in the middle of a high-security zone. One human broke away from the others, almost skipping as he tossed something small and metallic from hand to hand. It landed at the feet of a surveillance bot with a quiet clink. Before Krrx'tal's optics could zoom in, the screen flashed with a burst of light. Then, to his horror, the bot's display lit up with two flashing words. "Party mode." "Party mode," another alien muttered, just as perplexed as Krrx'tal. Without warning, the bot's lenses flashed a riot of colors, the lights bouncing off the metal walls, casting sporadic rainbows along the corridor. Then came the sound, something thundering, harsh, and filled with a rhythmic beat that made his sensory appendages twitch uncontrollably. It wasn't anything from the Federation's tactical sound library, it was loud, fast, and raw. "They're insane," Zorn choked out, as the bot whirled in its new mode, randomly casting disco lights across the room. "Why would they do this?" "Because they're humans." Krrx'tal all but shouted. "They're enjoying this." His words fell like a curse. The feed flickered again, and the screen zoomed in on one human, a female soldier with what looked like a makeshift crown of grenades attached to her helmet. She threw a careless wave toward the camera, a wicked grin barely visible through her visor. That's when Krrx'tal noticed the inscriptions etched on their armor. Each human soldier had their call sign painted in a jagged, chaotic style, but one in particular stood out: Bolt. He'd heard stories about Bolt, tales that felt more like bad dreams told around a mercenary campfire. Bolt was the one who'd brought down the Grath Prime defenses by rigging their own nuclear reactors as part of an elaborate bluff. He was also the one who reportedly turned a Krrx'tal mining colony into a very expensive fireworks display, all while blaring the same maddening human music. Just as the lights dimmed and the party bot went quiet, Bolt's voice rang out, echoing through the halls. "Knock, knock, fellas. We're here for a good time and maybe just a little destruction. Play nice and we won't redecorate." The command center fell silent. The alien mercenaries stared at each other, their eyes wide and their grips tightening on their weapons. No one dared speak, they knew exactly what this meant. The humans weren't here for any conventional assault. They were here to play, and there was nothing more dangerous in the galaxy than a human having fun. Krrx'tal swallowed hard. "Command, requesting evacuation protocol," he muttered, even though he knew it was a lost cause. "Please. They're not ordinary soldiers. They're Deathworlders." The only response he received was a knowing silence. Unleashing the chaos. The Dorax facility had been built to withstand assaults from every species in the Federation. It had reinforced corridors, layers of automated defenses, and surveillance tech rivaling anything found in the core worlds. But as the humans infiltrated deeper, Krrx'tal couldn't shake the feeling that every layer of defense meant nothing. The music thundered through the facility now, echoing louder as the Deathworlders made their way through the halls with a pace that felt almost leisurely. He heard one of them bolt, from the sound of it, bantering over their comms about the facility's poor lighting choices. "They're making fun of us," Krrx'tal whispered, though he meant to stay silent. "Let them mock. Once they're in range, we'll ambush them," hissed Commander Krrx'tal, their contract lead, who'd somehow retained his confidence. Krrx'tal wished he had that confidence, but he had done his research. Stories from skirmishes where entire mercenary bands had disappeared, their last words garbled recordings of human laughter. As the humans approached, their swagger was palpable through the surveillance feeds, and their voices bounced along the corridors as if they were sharing a casual conversation. Then came the unmistakable clink of a grenade rolling across the ground, just out of sight but close enough to set every alien's nerves alight. The mercenaries braced for an explosion. Instead, the grenade popped open with a hiss, releasing a cloud of pink, sparkling smoke that flooded the corridor. Out of the haze rolled a small army of robots, small, boxy, crudely painted with cartoonish grins and festooned with streamers. Each one carried a speaker that blared raucous music. They spun and twirled, bumping into walls and each other, leaving a trail of confetti in their wake. "What in the galaxy?" Krrx'tal's voice was thick with confusion. Just as the aliens were reeling from the bizarre sight, a soldier named Mira burst through the fog, and she was carrying a metal shield? No, it was a tray with drinks, each fizzing with an unsettling brightness. She slammed the tray down on a crate with a loud laugh, her eyes alight with a dangerous glint. "Drinks are served," she hollered, ducking back into the smoke before any alien could get a clear shot. A flash of light erupted from one of the party bots. The little robot's eyes lit up in two blinding beams, disorienting the mercenaries as it let out a robotic laugh that sounded like a raspy imitation of human amusement. Behind it, another human, a tall, wiry man with the callsign Rider, slid forward, dual-wielding energy pistols that barked blue bolts of plasma in every direction. Rider's voice crackled through the comms as he fired a burst down the corridor, sending 3 alien mercenaries scattering behind cover. "This is why they call us Deathworlders. If you think we're only here for a mission, you're in for a rude awakening." He kicked another party bot forward, and the robot tumbled and spun, flinging more lights and confetti, only to erupt with a deafening bang, a harmless but blinding flash that had Krrx'tal shielding his eyes. In the flash, Mira lunged forward again, armed this time with something strange, a metal tube that hissed with compressed air as it launched a grappling line across the room. With a pull, she zipped up to an overhead rafter, looking down with a smirk at the bewildered aliens below. Her voice came over the humans' open comms, deliberately loud enough for the mercenaries to hear. "Rider, you're slacking down there. You were supposed to take out that defense turret ages ago." Hey, the drinks don't serve themselves," he shouted back with a cackle. Suddenly, the human's tone shifted. Bolt's voice came through with a dangerous edge. "All right, crew, we've made enough noise. They know we're here, so let's clear the next room." Krrx'tal felt a cold sweat break across his exoskeleton. As much as the humans' bizarre antics had unnerved his team, he knew enough to recognize the shift in their tone. The humans were done with the warm-up. Now, the real fight would begin. Before the alien mercenaries could regroup, the facility lights flickered and went out entirely. Darkness swallowed them whole. Panic tightened Krrx'tal's chest as he struggled to regain his bearings in the pitch black. The only lights now came from the humans' gear, sharp glows cutting through the dark as they moved with lethal precision. A voice crackled over their shared frequency. "Bolts again. Krrx'tal, was it? We can see you, buddy. We've got thermal imaging, and, oh man, I can feel how terrified you are. Tell you what, if you surrender, we'll let you walk out of here with your dignity intact." Krrx'tal froze, the rifle shaking in his hands. He wanted to answer, to accept the offer, but his mouth was dry. His mind raced. Could he trust them? Was this just more of their mind games? "Don't listen to them, Krrx'tal," Commander Krrx'tal growled. "They're Deathworlders, yes, but they're still just." A flash of light and a deafening crack cut him off mid-sentence. The blast from Ryder's plasma rifle hit Krrx'tal square in the torso, dropping him where he stood. There was a silence on the mercenary comms. broken only by the humans' laughter as they moved forward, the shadows swallowing them again. "They're toying with us," whispered Zorn, and Krrx'tal could hear the horror in his friend's voice. "We're not a challenge to them, we're just entertainment." At that moment, Krrx'tal made a decision. He tossed his rifle to the ground, hands raised. "I surrender! I surrender!" His voice cracked, desperate, over the comms. For a second, nothing happened. Then, through the darkness, Bolt's chuckle echoed, low and satisfied. "Smart choice, Krrx'tal, smart choice." But just as relief began to wash over him, Krrx'tal heard another voice, a smooth, quiet female tone that had been silent until now. "Ah, Bolt, you're too soft, but, since he surrendered, should we give him a proper send-off?" "Of course," Bolt answered, with an almost jovial laugh. "Get ready, Krrx'tal, this one's for you." Suddenly, lights erupted around him, multicolored, spinning in wild patterns as the final party bot rolled into the room, playing one last booming track with a bass that shook the walls. Confetti blasted out of its head like a small fireworks show, and then, with a final triumphant roar, it played the humans' victory anthem, the lyrics pulsing in the air around Krrx'tal's trembling form. "Humanity, we're here to stay. In space or on Deathworlds, we'll blow you away." With a flash, the bot powered down, leaving Krrx'tal in silence. The lights returned, and he saw the remaining mercenaries standing around him, eyes wide and speechless as the Deathworlders exited the facility without a scratch. The mission was over, and Krrx'tal was left alive, but he knew he'd never truly escape the horror of the Deathworlders' twisted joy in combat. They were death incarnate, and he would be telling tales of the Dorax Incident for the rest of his days, hoping it would be enough to warn others. When humans come, don't fight, just run. The final stand and surrender. Krrx'tal's nerves were raw. Every sound in the Dorax facility made his exoskeleton itch, and he found himself flinching at the slightest noise, even from his own comrades. What had once been an elite band of mercenaries had turned into a fractured, fearful group. The humans had pushed them to their limits with bizarre, relentless tactics that no amount of training could have prepared them for. From a corner of the room, Krrx'tal could see his friend Zorn still clutching his plasma rifle, his gaze darting around the flickering lights, half expecting a human to burst through the wall. The facility's automatic defenses had long since been disabled by the Deathworlders' tech tricks, and it felt like they were sitting in a vast, dark tomb, just waiting for the next strike. A faint shuffle echoed down the hall. Krrx'tal's heart froze as every alien in the room braced for the worst. "Hold your fire," whispered Commander Krrx'tal, now sporting a wound across one mandible that he'd sustained in an earlier skirmish with the humans. He had lost much of his former bravado but still tried to maintain order. Then came a voice, a deep, easygoing tone that made Krrx'tal's blood run cold. "Hey, Commandos," the human soldier known as Bolt called out from down the hall. His voice was calm, conversational, and far too relaxed for anyone engaged in a firefight. "How's the ambience in here? Feels a little tense." A thin beam of light swept down the corridor, illuminating the mercenaries' faces in a harsh, unnatural glow. Krrx'tal saw a glimpse of Bolt, his silhouette sharp and unnervingly at ease, as though he were strolling down a familiar street rather than facing off against dozens of armed mercenaries. "Last chance, friends, drop your weapons, and we can finish this the easy way," Bolt offered, his tone disturbingly friendly. "Otherwise, well, I can't guarantee you'll like what happens next." Zorn trembled beside him, his grip on his rifle faltering. Krrx'tal's own claws itched with the urge to surrender right then and there, but Commander Krrx'tal stood firm, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "We don't negotiate with Deathworlders," Krrx'tal spat, firing off a plasma bolt down the hall. It sizzled through the air but hit nothing, the humans' shadows melting back into the dark. "Suit yourself," came Bolt's cheerful response, echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. The next few seconds were pure chaos. A series of loud pops and whistles echoed from the shadows as small, metallic spheres clattered into the room. They didn't explode, not in the traditional sense. Instead, they burst into clouds of thick, blue smoke, covering the floor in swirling fog that quickly engulfed every mercenary in the room. Panic swept through the ranks as Krrx'tal and the others choked on the acrid smoke, struggling to see anything beyond an arm's length. Amidst the haze, he caught glimpses of the humans moving with inhuman agility. Mira reappeared, swinging down from a ceiling rafter with a grappling hook. firing short bursts from her weapon before vanishing again. Ryder, the wiry soldier who never stopped grinning, moved through the smoke like a ghost, his twin energy pistols firing in rapid succession. One by one, the mercenaries around him fell, some disarmed, others subdued, all of them incapacitated with a speed and precision that was both efficient and terrifying. Each human seemed to have their own style, each unpredictable in a new way. One even hurled confetti bombs to create additional confusion, blinding mercenaries with bright, flashing colors before darting in and knocking them unconscious. Krrx'tal's mandibles clicked in raw panic as he fumbled with his plasma rifle, but his vision was blurred, his senses overwhelmed by the human's multisensory assault. His own comrades were scattered, retreating in any direction they could find, while Bolt's voice echoed through the smoke, taunting, laughing, as if he were having the time of his life. Finally, it came down to just him, Zorn, and Commander Krrx'tal, backed into a corner with no cover, the humans' shadows closing in around them. Bolt emerged from the haze, standing just beyond striking range. His helmet visor was reflective, a blank stare masking the eyes beneath, but his stance was casual, almost relaxed. In his hand, he held a small device, something Krrx'tal couldn't identify, but the sight of it alone made him break out in a cold sweat. End of the line, fellas, Bolt said, the casual tone gone, replaced with something much darker. Krrx'tal threw his weapon to the ground, raising his claws. I surrender, I. But before he could finish, Commander Krrx'tal lunged forward, swinging his plasma rifle in a desperate attempt to take Bolt down. The human sidestepped smoothly, as if anticipating the move, and in one fluid motion, struck the commander with the blunt end of his weapon, sending Krrx'tal crumpling to the ground, unconscious. With Krrx'tal down, Bolt turned back to Krrx'tal, his visor reflecting Krrx'tal's terrified face. You're smarter than your commander, Bolt said, nodding approvingly. Now, hands behind your head and face the wall. Krrx'tal complied, trembling as he dropped to his knees, his claws laced behind his head. He could feel Ryder's presence as he approached, the wiry human leaning close enough for Krrx'tal to hear his calm, taunting voice. Ever heard the phrase, a fate worse than death? Ryder whispered with a grin. Krrx'tal could feel more than see. You're about to become the warning story for every merc in the galaxy. As the humans finished securing the facility and rounded up the remaining mercenaries, Krrx'tal was struck by a chilling realization: these weren't ordinary soldiers. They were trained to control the battlefield with fear, with unpredictability, and with a relentless joy in the chaos they unleashed. With their mission complete, the humans regrouped, moving out with a quiet efficiency that sent a fresh wave of dread through him. Just before leaving, Bolt looked back, giving Krrx'tal a mock salute. Hey, you fought well, better than most, he said with a strange kind of respect. Spread the word. Yeah, the Deathworlders don't play by the rules. Krrx'tal could only nod, numb with a mix of terror and grudging awe. The humans left the facility in silence, taking only what they needed and leaving behind an unforgettable message for the Federation and mercenaries everywhere. When humans are involved, there is no routine mission, there is only survival and a lingering, unforgettable terror. The legend begins. Days later, Krrx'tal sat in a dimly lit cantina on the edge of Federation space, nursing a drink that barely dulled the nerves still vibrating in his body. The other patrons, alien mercenaries, smugglers, and a few bounty hunters, were eyeing him with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. He was one of the few survivors of the Dorax Incident, and word had spread fast. The stories were already morphing into legends, exaggerated beyond recognition. He'd overheard tales about humans who could phase through walls and Deathworlders who feasted on raw plasma. But no matter how wild the stories got, one thing was true: no mercenary in their right mind wanted to face humans now, not after what Krrx'tal had seen. One of the mercenaries, a hulking creature with heavy scales and gleaming tusks, sauntered over to Krrx'tal's table. His eyes glinted with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. So, they say you went toe-to-toe with the Deathworlders and lived to tell about it, the mercenary said, crossing his massive arms. Is it true, or just talk? Krrx'tal took a slow, steadying breath. The memory of the human soldiers, Bolt, Ryder, Mira, flashed through his mind in an onslaught of noise, lights, and terror. Even now, he could still hear the echoes of their music, feel the lingering impact of their chaotic tactics. Every word of it is true, Krrx'tal replied, his voice a low, haunted rasp. I've fought 100 battles, faced every species you could think of, but the Deathworlders? They aren't like us. They enjoy the fight, and they're unpredictable. Just when you think you know what they'll do, they flip it around." The scaly mercenary snorted, unimpressed. "Bah, you make them sound like demons. They're just soldiers. Bullets, plasma, all bleeds the same." Krrx'tal's mandibles clicked in frustration. He knew he couldn't convey the experience through words alone, but he had to try. Others needed to understand. They aren't just soldiers. They're trained to win battles through fear, through chaos, through anything they can think of. They have machines that flash lights and blast sound, tactics that don't make sense, and they'll use it all to drive you into panic before they even fire a shot, Krrx'tal said, his voice tightening. "If you hear the music, they're strange, terrible war music. If you see their machines with the painted faces, it's already too late." He took another slow sip of his drink, his hands steadying as he continued. "They gave us a choice to surrender, and the ones of us smart enough to take it were the only ones left to tell the tale. You think it's a coincidence? No, they want us to spread this story, to let every mercenary know who they are and why they should be feared." A flicker of doubt crossed the mercenary's face, but he forced a scoff, as if trying to hold on to his bravado. "Fear is a weapon of the weak." Krrx'tal leaned forward, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "They're not weak. They're from a world where everything fights to survive, where gravity alone would crush half the species in this cantina. To them, this galaxy is a playground, and we are just entertainment." The mercenary's expression faltered. Others nearby had overheard Krrx'tal's words, and a quiet ripple of unease passed through the room. A few of them glanced around nervously, as if expecting a group of humans to burst through the doors with music blaring and confetti bombs exploding. Krrx'tal pushed back from the table and stood, the weight of the Dorax incident heavy on his shoulders. He turned to the room, his voice carrying a warning to any who would listen. "If you ever face them, don't make the mistake of thinking they'll play by the same rules as us. Don't think they'll fight a clean fight, or an honorable one. They'll turn the battlefield into something you can't even recognize, and when they leave, they'll leave you broken not just in body, but in spirit." A hush settled over the cantina, the weight of Krrx'tal's words sinking in. He finished his drink and set the empty glass down with a finality that felt like closing a chapter in his life. He had survived the Dorax incident, but he knew, deep down, that he would never be the same, and he would never, ever take a contract that involved humans again. As Krrx'tal walked out into the cool darkness, the murmurs of the cantina followed him, rippling with apprehension and fear. Stories of the Deathworld Commandos would spread, tales of humans who fought with laughter, with music, with machines that celebrated battle instead of dreading it, and with every retelling, the legend of the Deathworlders would grow. Somewhere, far from Federation space, Bolt, Ryder, and Mira would be preparing for their next mission, unaware or perhaps keenly aware that they had just rewritten their own legend. For in a galaxy teeming with species, each one powerful and cunning in its own way, only humans had mastered the art of being truly terrifying. Krrx'tal paused outside, looking up at the stars. A chill ran through him as he realized just how many other worlds would soon know the same terror he had, and as he gazed into the night, he found himself whispering a warning to the silent stars. Deathworlders are out there, and they're coming for us all. End of story.